Officers and guests to turn off their cameras. You should turn your camera and microphone. Turn on your camera and microphone when you speak, but please turn them back off again afterwards. Could I ask all Democratic Services to mute everyone and begin recording? We've already started recording. Pnawn da, croeso I cyfarfod, diolch am bawb am dod. Good afternoon, welcome to the Regeneration and Public Protection Scrutiny Committee on Tuesday the 14th of December 2021. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and may be broadcast via the authority's internet site. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the authority. Item Agenda 1, apologies for absence. No, none? Okay.
Sorry, Chair, I have apologies from Alan Owen.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I've also got apologies from Hilary Hopkins, our co-opee.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Item Agenda 2, declarations of interest. None. I suppose I better declare that I currently work at Merthyr Tydfil Leisure Trust as event program at Red House, but this doesn't cover that. But I thought it might be worth it saying that. Item Agenda 3, Crucible and Cyfarthfa plan. Chris, I'm guessing you're going to present this.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. That's my plan, and it's always you as well. So we'll talk to the report together and answer questions together. So shall I proceed, Chair?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. Apologies for not circulating the appendix of the biogs. I think you should have you received that now or not?
I've received it, Chris, and I'll circulate it to members shortly.
Yeah, okay. I'll draw. Yeah, apologies for that. At the point of drafting the report, we hadn't had permission from the trust, the foundation, to circulate the members. So that's why we admitted it. We got the permission in the end, but we forgot to put it with the report. Apologies for that. I'll talk to the board members generally when I come to that section of the report. So, okay. So in terms of the overview of the report, Cyfarthfa Heritage Area, and as the summary alludes to, significant amount of works taking place or developed over the last 10 years in the park and the area, predominantly the park, and the report sets out really some of the projects undertaken in the last 5 years, and in particular the evolving nature of the Cyfarthfa Foundation really, and some future plans for the area. So as you talk through, as you read through the introduction, I think the start of the report talks about the very early days between 2011-16, where we saw quite a significant amount of funding coming in for the Valley programme and HLF and Parks for People. That really was the catalyst for the very first master plan, and I think what emanated out of that were things like the bothy, the splash pad, the first phase of the Canolfan, and obviously quite a lot of work in and around the grounds. The railway was developed, so all those early projects really, it feels a long time ago now actually, guys, only 10 years. So 3.1, 3.2 talks about a little bit about that journey, and then as you'll be able to see in 3.3, the start really of a new wave of development through the Design Commission for Wales, resulting in this one-day charrette. And at that point, we get introduced to the chair now of the Cyfarthfa Foundation, Geraint Talvan Davis. And I think that's evolved over the last couple of years, really, with the charrette, bringing together like-minded people to a very wet and windy day in the castle to start thinking about what the future could look like. As part of the development, four strands started to appear, and you can see those at 3.6. And from the charrette, obviously 3.10, you'll be able to see some recommendations coming through really from the report that was created. and I think, you know, that takes us to where we were. I won't go into too much detail on this, Chair. I'm assuming members would have read the report, and I think probably we're better placed to answer questions, really, if members have questions on the detail from the Crucial report, the Cyfarthfa plan, some of the ideas that came out really from the plan in the first phase, second phase, third phase, right the way through to, you know, Cyfarthfa Park, Valleys Regional Park of 4.18. As you know, we managed to secure around £700,000 for redevelopment of the Canolfan. I think that's detailed at 4.21. And I think what you'll see, what we've tried to do is detail out the specific zones in terms of the furnaces, the castle and the foundation, as well, including Pandy Farm as well, which is an interesting dimension, privately owned as part of the Cyfarthfa Foundation. I think much has happened, but there's still lots to do. I think fundamentally, Chair, the report tries to give a balance in terms of where we were almost 10 years ago, the development of the park, the essence of creating and identifying that we needed a special purpose vehicle, i.e. the Cyfarthfa Foundation, to take this to a different place. And I think when you see the details of the current board that's been assembled, 13 members, they do come with international and national pedigree, which is slightly different to the current board of Merthyr Tydfil Leisure Trust. And I think we've drawn reference to this in previous reports to council, and I think the Leisure Trust and ourselves identified that this project, the SPV, needed to be far more radical, needed to have far more experienced board members because of the international quality opportunity that we were sitting on. And I think we indicated this to council almost 12 months ago in reports, and now to see the board has come together, right, in a way that is really a blended of skills, experience and knowledge, we should take some comfort from that, I feel. So I'll pause there, Chair. I could go into lots of detail, as you know, and I could probably talk forever on this. I don't want to today, though, to be honest with you. I'd rather, you know, answer questions, or try to, and have conversations about the journey, really, to be honest with you. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, not feeling yourself, you know?
No, I'm fine. It's just, it's so much in that report. I can talk about it all forever and a day, you know that, Chair.
Only teaser. Yeah. Any questions? Anyone? Come on. None?
Sorry, Chair, I missed the last part of Chris's spiel. I had a bad connection then.
Okay, yeah, we just started off with questions now, Kev. I it's gone through the report and hoping you've read it. So yeah, any questions now? So first up, Malcolm.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, something seems to have changed on my status bar at the top, and I was finding it difficult to find my hands, but I found it now. I must have had an update somewhere. Chris, it talks about a laser survey for the furnaces. Can you give us a bit more information about this? Has it actually taken place, or is it due to take place?
Yeah, Zoe, do you wanna give the most up-to-date position on that the Carwyn's looking at?
Yes, no problem. So the laser survey was undertaken, I think a couple of years ago now. And what that's allowed us to proceed in doing, which I think is included just a bit later on in the report, is we've now appointed Mott MacDonald to look at creating tender documents for us. so we can understand what the costs are in order to preserve that schedule ancient monument. Because the difficulty we have is, we appreciate we need to secure funding in order to preserve the furnaces, but it's always been a bit of a sort of finger in the ear job then, for want of a better term, because we don't understand what the costs associated with that are. So Mark MacDonald would have all of that information, councillor, in terms of all the original survey work, etc., that we undertook as a local authority. And they are now preparing those tender docs, and we're hoping to get those sort of finalised, signed off by our Cyfarthfa working group early in the new year, in order to issue before the end of the financial year then. So by the summer we should have the costs to start applying for funding.
Okay, thank you. Couple of other points. On 5.21 and 5.22, it's a bit concerning. A relocation of the museum collection is considered essential due to the structural deterioration of the castle, and due to the deterioration of the castle and water ingress, we're planning to relocate part of the museum. Can you give us a bit more information on that?
Yeah, so you might be aware some years ago we managed to secure about £1 million for the roof, right, through Vibrant and Viable Places. I think we were lucky to get that external funding, because I think the funder at that point in time was very understanding that by fixing the roof, it was like a kind of preservation of the monument, which bought us a little bit of time, right? The castle is creaking, guys. It really, really is. Right? It's not in a good place, and it is of a concern. It is of a concern to us. Hence, the major structural survey that needs to take place, right? Now, sitting underneath that is concerns over the collection, right? And we've been working with the Leisure Trust for a number of months on trying to get a better handle on, one, the quantity of the archives, the importance of them, in priority rating, right? So we can get a better feel in terms of what we need to relocate. Now, we've identified some space in Unit 5 as a temporary interim, and we're just working through what that looks like at the moment. And the fine art collection is probably at that priority status in terms of preservation. So there's a task and finish group working on this with our estates, with Jane Selwood and the museum staff, so that we can get a collection relocation plan in place, just to buy them some time, right? Because as you know, from the foundation plan, the Cyfarthfa Heritage Area plan, between the castle and the furnaces, they are priority projects. However, they are going to take mammoth amount of finance to bring back into what a quality international product is going to be. And not only finance, it's going to take some time as well. It's really going to take some time, right? So we have an interim plan, short to medium or medium to long, that kind of preserves the collection moving forward. And I know there's some site meetings taking place this week in Unit 5 with our teams, with Alan, just to make sure we got that room right, just to get an angle in terms of what we need to move. And even down to that move, logistically, right, a very detailed analysed move that needs to take place to make sure, even when we move them, the place we move them to has to be of a very, very high bar. So we've got the National Museum of Wales involved, National Libraries involved, we've got Cadw involved. We met with them this week. So I think we've got every person possible in this professional discipline to give us the right team that can move move almost all of the collection to another place.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
But not easy.
No, thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks, Mark and Chris. I before I move on to Kevin and then Gareth, I just want to ask a quick couple of questions on Malcolm's questions. So in terms of the furnace site, it's currently a compound for the A465, the area in front, is that correct? The A465 contractors are using that to park near there? Is that correct?
Where now? Down?
The furnaces.
No, not that I'm aware. Just behind the Mormon Church, you mean, is it?
Yeah, I'm almost positive they are. I'll check. I'll have a drive up there tomorrow and have a look. That's what I'm led to believe. And my question was going to be, how big are these machines that they traveling there, and would that cause a problem in terms of the foundations and the furnace sites?
Nothing's crossed our path in terms of options for that. I think there are. I'd be really surprised if that's. I haven't heard anything of that. Is over you?
No, not at all.
Right, I'll have a look at that tomorrow. Okay, the other question I had was around the collection. Obviously there's stuff in storage and then there's stuff that's on display at the moment. What is the priority? Will Unit 5 take it all? And where are we with in terms of like insurances, I'm led to believe, and accreditation and stuff? Are we at risk of that?
So from the museum perspective, at this point in time, the museum is still in situ, so the museum will function. It's the archives that are in the collection store, caretakers, warehouse, etc., that we are looking to move, right? There are concerns over the accreditation, right? However, we've been asked to come up with a bit of a plan that gives mitigation against the accreditation. So I think in the short term, from our meeting last week, I think WG representatives left the meeting quietly confident, right? Because I think we were confident ourselves that when we found a location to move the collection stores to, not the ideal, by no means, right? Not the ideal, but it seems to be far better than where it is at the moment, so that's good. In the longer term, right? Next year, with reference to the longer term, we need to start having conversations over what museum services looks like moving forward, because it's probably highly unlikely, right? And we've had conversations with Jane over this, highly unlikely the museum will be able to continue its service from the castle once it's got X amount of money to redevelop the castle. Highly unlikely, right? So I think we need to have a conversation next year over what that plan looks like, and are there alternative venues that we can run the museum service out of? Now, Jane and Wendy tell me that happens naturally throughout the UK in some places, right? So I think we need to have that conversation, because as I draw reference to, it's inevitable that once the big finance plan comes over the mountain, we're talking anything between 35-40 million to redevelop the castle. I think the contractors will need a clean run at that without the museum services running from a third of that footprint. Yeah. So short term, I think we should have some confidence that we can move collection stores to Unit 5. But I think the medium to long term, Lee, I think we need to have a conversation with the Les Trust on, and Carmarthen Foundation, of course.
Yeah, great. That was my next question anyway. Thank you for that. Kevin?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. This follows on from the questions just been asked regarding the collection in the museum, Chris. How confident of the security are we in Unit 5 if it does actually go there? Because obviously these pieces of art are probably worth a heck of a lot of money, I would have thought. So I know you said you've had initial conversations with Cadw at the moment, and what are their thoughts on security?
I think we've Jane Kelly and Michelle, no fairness, have put some great thought into this, right? Obviously, Kelly and Michelle are part of the museum team. They've been to Unit 5 a number of times. They looked at the room. They've come up with a very, very strong wish list in terms of, you know, boarding up windows, the environment needs to be right, humidification needs to be right, CCTV cameras needs to be security there. So from what we've seen from a scope, it looks quite strong, right? It looks really strong. And again, you know, we need to delve into that a little bit more. We need to see what it looks like on paper actually materializes in terms of even down to costs. Right, because you're right, Kev, it is some of the artifacts that being shared with us are of high value. So I think we just got to work through that a little bit. And to be honest, we've got to make sure it's 100% secure. And we've just to make me worth mentioning, the space in Unit 5. I think we're lucky we've got that, right? Because I think the team did look at a scoping exercise for alternative premises of the county borough. A number were mentioned, right, but none of them were really suitable, right. Many of them were cost prohibitive. It was cost an absolute fortune, right. The rent and hire space, what could be for 3 years this. Right, so again, Unit 5's come out very, very strong in our tick list of accessibility. It's our own building, right? So we should be able to put a lot of our own control measures in there, and security being one of them, Kev, I think.
Yeah, because obviously you've touched on humidity, because basically Unit 5 is a shed, isn't it, really? So so obviously all those have been taken in place, and so we potentially looking at creating our own Fort Knox inside Unit 5 then to look after the artifacts. And I suppose that with the items on display at the moment, when you said you may have to move to a different location, then you're going to have exactly the same sort of issues, aren't you? So has anything been suggested or thrown up in the air as possibilities?
No, not at the moment. I think we're lucky that part of the castle is where we spent the money on the roof. So yeah, is kind of, I'd say, watertight. Is it ever watertight? It's as good as it's going to get, right? So we're lucky that I think the investment a number of years ago, was that 5 years ago, was it, $1 million?
Yeah, 5 years ago.
5 years ago was spent, we think, on the right place from the current museum. But I think as I mentioned earlier, I think next year we really have to think about the medium-term functionality of it to coincide with the foundation driving hard to secure the finance to remodel Cyfarthfa Castle in terms of what it's going to be in the future. I think, and I think that would need a long lead-in time, Kev, I think, just to analyse, you know, what could be possible in the county borough.
Yeah, absolutely. Lovely. Thank you for that, Chris. I'll move on from the museum. My last question is around the Pandy Farm, because obviously it's, like you say, it's a strange situation that we've got an individual owning it. Do you see us going for perhaps possession of that facility going forward, or how would Pandy Farm fit into the overall plan then, if we're not? And I know I can see from the report we got the owner's consent to, for any plans going forward.
Yeah, so the Pandy Farm, it's kind of been the forgotten world, really, because in many respects, a lot of our energy and effort has been within the footprint of Cyfarthfa Park, isn't it? Right, and I think the late Tony Morton, I think we had a lot of respect for Tony, actually. Good guy. And we used to meet up in the Heritage Trust and forums and conferences, etc. Started to engage with us in his latter years. And I think he came along to the Heritage Conference to talk about his vision, really. And I think he had an affinity with, I think, Geraint Alvin Davies and the work he's performed, and all of a sudden he formed a bit of a connection, right? And I think we were lucky, really, to speak to Tony, as I say, in his latter days, because I think he wanted the Pandy Farm to be very much front and centred of any vision moving forward. And I think he wanted the Pandy Farm story to be portrayed as part of the bigger story, right?
Which, if I remember correctly, it did play a major part of the story.
Yeah, Kev, I don't profess to know the detail of that.
I don't know the ins and outs. I just know it was quite a significant part of it.
Yeah, I think it played host to one of the Crauchetes, I think, when they were building the castle. I don't know the complete story, but I think we've managed to catch up with this in a way that Tony sold the property to a local developer who we know relatively well, and I think we were keen then to try to make sure the new owner saw the bigger picture as part of the development. We've encouraged and supported the owner now to be part of a first phase feasibility study as part of the plan moving forward, which is encouraging, which is really, really encouraging. So it's not our intentions to purchase, right? It's our intention, really, to work with the private developer as part of the wider development moving forward. So it's very early days. Lots of potential in Pandy Farm, and it could be developed in a way that's sympathetic to the wider area and add value, really, to the tourism offer. So I think we've got the attention of the owner very, very much. Sees the bigger picture. I think there's been various meetings with himself and the Geraint Alvin Davies and some of his associates as well. So we've joined people up to have a conversation. We're hoping to see the first phase of the feasibility study early January, February, so I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whereby then they'll be able to present, really, to the Cyfarthfa Foundation in terms of what that could be as part of a wider offer.
Is Pandy Farm listed at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great listed. The clock tower.
It's just
I think the whole building is, sorry, but the clock tower is in our ownership, and then I think there's a separate listing. There's two separate listings on there, but again, I'm not exactly sure how it's split. But I'm sure it's the building and then the clock tower separately. But yes, grade 2.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks. So, and I suppose really, if we're looking to bring it's in the owner's interest to help us with this, because if we're looking to bring Pandy Farm into the wider scale, then obviously it will add more value to the actual property than and the land itself. I would have thought.
Well, yeah, definitely, and it's smack bang in the middle of the estate. I think, as I say, it's been the forgotten world for a long, long time, and now raising the bar in terms of the opportunity, on whatever the vision and whatever it models out to be, can only be a good thing, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to create here, is harmony between, a not-for-profit company with charitable status in the foundation, balance against a private sector operator. Can they work together? I think they can. Right? I think they can. They will chase potentially different funding sources, which is a good thing. So again, are they going to be competing? They may be for finance, right? In some quarters, but again, I think they both recognise that it's got to be the shared vision, back to the vision. You know, big brand, big quality, big offer. You know, and I think as long as they all sign up to that, I think the journey will be an interesting one, guys. I think.
I know staff question. It's not a farm at the moment, is it? It's just properties at the moment, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Kev. Malcolm?
Sorry, Gareth, has your question been answered? Because you
It has indeed, Malcolm. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just a quick one, really. Understand that the Panley farm is integral to the whole situation, but any contingency plans in place in case the owner ever decided to sell?
So we could always buy it ourselves. You know, I to be honest, we haven't really thought about it. I think to date the owner's intentions have been quite honourable, right? He's the type of character that would say, look, if it wasn't anything other, he'd tell us, right? But he's happy to come on a journey with us and the Cyfarthfa Foundation. I don't know. I hadn't crossed my mind, Malcolm, to be honest. Really hadn't.
Yeah, I know it's unlikely, but if it is a possibility, isn't it? That
yeah, there's a possibility. I would like to think so, and I don't know what your comments are. I think I'd like to think if the owner goes cold on it, I'd like to think he'd tell us. Right? I'd like to think he would, and then we can have that conversation, because I think where Tony Morton's ideas were translated to the new owners, I think through affiliations, right? They built up, I think, over a number of years, a very, very good relationship. And I think, you know, Tony didn't take the asset to market. He didn't market it. He sold it to that infinity of a friend. That's what I've been told. And I think bestowed with that was, I think, you know, the new owners, look, this is only what we've been told, isn't it? At the end of the day, he's got an affinity with the shared vision that Tony had for the property, right? In terms of the bigger picture. And I know that's only based on conversations, but having said that, you know, I think if the new owner did get cold feet, I'd like to think he'd have a conversation with us, Malcolm, to say, look, I really don't fancy this anymore. He hasn't done that. I think he's been enthused by the feasibility studies, though, isn't he? I think he's been enthused by it, and only time will tell, I think, guys.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Malcolm. Kev?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This question has just come to me, Chris, because obviously you and your team have spent a whole lot of time and has been invested in this so far, and quite rightly so as well, because it is such an important project that's happened and going forward. Are you happy with do you feel happy with where we are at this point in time, or would you have preferred to have seen things moved on a step quicker than what has happened so far? Taking out last year completely, obviously that was completely at the ball game last year, but what's your feelings on where we are at the moment with this?
I think,
and that's no criticism against anybody, honestly.
No, I think we always want things to move quick. I do anyway. You probably know that. However, I think there's a lot of things we need to recognise over the last year or 3 years that are in place that we're going to manage in different ways. So if you just think of the local authority's position now in amongst this. We contracted to the Leisure Trust for these assets, and then we developing a new company in parallel, right? So being in the middle can be somewhat difficult, and pace then depicts really people's appetite to move at different paces, right? So bearing that in mind, I think, yeah, I think we're there or thereabouts with it. I think thinking back to probably pre-pandemic, I think we've lost quite a bit of time as a result of the pandemic, obviously.
Yeah.
However, things haven't stopped. I think, you know, the Cyfarthfa Foundation have managed to secure, I think, £1.2 million. I think that's in 5.6 of the report. They haven't spent much yet because they're working up their team, right? So that bit of it's been probably on point, on time. So yeah, I think, so I don't know what you think, but I think generally in a good place. I think if I was to draw reference to where we could have been a little bit more clearer in terms of what the forward plan is, what are we going to do with the castle, right? What is that business model moving forward? You know, how are we going to raise 35-40 million? You know, because that is the challenge. And I think if I was being super critical of myself, I think if we could have pushed that bar a little bit more, right? I think if I had a better idea on how that, because that would have answered some of the earlier questions of the museum, the collection stores, isn't it? Really, because I think the building is decaying. It is decaying. It's a concern. It is a real concern. So if I was, you know, being critical of myself, if I was asking myself, okay, what could we have homed in on a little bit more? What could we have tightened it up, right? It would have been probably the castles, though, I think. What do you think, Zoe?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of dependencies on each of these individual projects as well, which have a significant impact on timescales. You know, using the castle as an example, yeah, we need to, similarly to the furnaces, understand the costs. But this early piece of work we're doing now in terms of the condition survey, until we've got all of that detail, understanding the current condition of that building, what works need to be undertaken, you know, to the wider building itself, let alone considering, you know, what that will become in the future. It takes time to get to that point, doesn't it, of understanding the costs associated with it. Same with the furnaces, you know. I think, yeah, I think going back this time last year, we might have thought we'd be in a very different position by now, where we'd have applications already in with funders. But again, it takes that time to understand, you know, what the forward plan is and what each of the stages are. And I think, you know, the Ian Ritchie report is absolutely fantastic, and, you know, is really going to help us transform the Cyfarthfa heritage area. But I think now understanding each of the components of each project, we've just got to sort of be realistic in terms of timescales in comparison to perhaps when they identified when we can complete projects. We just need to just take a look at that to say, okay, is that a realistic date now when we look at all of the different dependencies? And, you know, some of those are completely out of our control, aren't they? And as Chris said, the deterioration of the castle and us looking at the relocation of the collection now, that has become an immediate priority for us, which doesn't necessarily mean you're sort of deflecting from that longer term plan, but you've got to really focus on the sort of present and what you need to do at this point, isn't it? So yeah, I think, you know, we're not massively off track, Chris. There are perhaps some things we need to start sort of ramping up in the new year. But again, Chris's point is fair then around the Cyfarthfa Foundation. They've secured that 1.2 million. Once they get their project team in and their consultants in, you know, hopefully they will start to lead on a lot of that work running simultaneous to what we're doing as an authority as well, and there'll be some real progression by the time we bring this report back to scrutiny in a 12-month time.
And last question from me. Were you surprised at how much the castle has deteriorated, Chris? When you first saw it, did you think, were you expecting it to be in a better condition than what it actually is at the present time?
I think the climate change is really hit infrastructure, isn't it? I think we're seeing quite a lot of wet weather. I think it's not the only building that's deteriorating. We get issues with Triage Library, you know, etc. So I think one of the challenges that we're looking at is the whole estate, isn't it? Right, because I think we've got a task and finish group set up with the estates to look at the whole assets, right, and structure and condition surveys, and the common things coming back is the whole infrastructure is decaying. So that's down to Ynysfach Engine House, Osterbaris Cottage, all the libraries. You know, I had a chat to Lee the other day, probably the Red House. The Red House is the best thing of it all at the moment, and he's telling me that's, you know, might have some issues. So point is, you know, it's all decaying at the wrong time, isn't it? This is the problem in that we want to transfer some of these assets now to another company, right? Well, I tell you what, right? The board members will have a fierce red pen on analysing what we transferring. I can tell you that now, which is we won't be handing over any lame ducks, guys, right? Because they're not going to allow it, and rightly so, isn't it? Rightly so. We want to hand over winners, right? So the new company can hit the ground running, right, and deliver on the plan. And that's going to that is some challenge in itself, guys. It really is.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Kev. Andrew?
Hiya, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one off me, Chris. Looking at some of the additional projects, there are really outstanding that have been done in the past 10 years. I mean, myself, I'm only 15, so I've had the lucky part in being able to experience some of them. And they have been brilliant, and the work that you guys have done so far is amazing. And I'm aware that Zoe mentioned earlier about the funding which has just been secured. I think that's a great head start, almost a kick into gear for there, which is fantastic. My one point I was going to mention was something that Kevin brought up earlier, was the security of some of the stuff which is in the museum currently. But the question I want to ask is there any reason why the castle has been left for so long without no forward work going? And I know you mentioned there, Chris, the lots of buildings that are currently in the same boat, and I'm definitely not putting that down in the slightest. I was just wondering, that's all, because I mean, I am aware that it's being partly run by Mercia Leisure Trust, along with Red House, whereas it's kind of a different alternative from the likes of Caerphilly Council and Cardiff Council. I was just wondering if there is any extra additional comments you can make on that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think five years ago we were lucky enough to get £1 million for the roof, and I think that was, thinking back though, that was money very, very well spent. Right? Because I think if, based on what we know now, part of the building that is deteriorating in terms of the roof, if we hadn't spent that money, we'd probably now been talking about closing the museum. We probably would have, right? So we've managed externally to get enough money to buy us some time, right? The other side to this as well is we did curtail, I think we put this into the report, an HLF application that we decided strategically to pause, not proceed on, because we felt at that time it would prohibit the bigger picture, right? So thinking back to that decision was probably the right one, because I think we were chasing down some designs for the castle, and I think HLF was in for about 5-6 million, so was it something like that? And we had match funding from a number of sources. So point in getting to, we had a plan in place a couple of years back, but it was felt that by proceeding on that, we wouldn't have probably captured the bigger essence of what the foundation are doing now, right? And at the time, that was probably the right decision. Was it the right decision now from a deterioration of the building? Probably not, right? But that was the decision was made at that time, because we really didn't know what 5 years on the building fabric would look like, right? So it was a tough one. It was a tough one. Ironically as well, Andrew, what we've seen in HLF now as well is a downsizing of the funding allocations to Wales as well, right?
Yeah.
And the programs have changed as well, right? So the landscape in terms of funding for HLF has diminished slightly to what it was 5 years ago. So that's another problem that we now see moving forward in terms of where funding could come from, right? Having said that, you know, there's always going to be capital programs coming through the system for good quality projects, and that's where we feel the castle and the Cyfarth Edge will be in a very good place, because of the governance structure and the foundation now is of quality, right? So I don't know whether that answers some of the questions. I think over the years we've managed to probably be more reactive in terms of issues with the leakages in the castle, that we're having conversations now with the property services over some leaks, though, that we've got to fix, you know, and can we buy more time? I think the strategy has been for years is trying to buy as much time as we can before the bigger ticket project comes, but I do feel the bigger ticket project needs to be a little bit faster than it is at the moment. Otherwise we're gonna have to be probably doing some small scale works on the roof without looking at that bigger picture, Andrew, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much, Chris.
No problem.
Thanks, Andrew. Anybody else for any questions? John?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just one, Chris, on 5.26, the splash pad area. And in the last sentence there, it says it is anticipated that works will be complete by the end of financial year and will reopen in the spring of 22. Like, we're all aware of the social media post back in the summer regarding the splash pad, weren't we, you know, and the slating we had as a council, plus the Leisure Trust. How confident are you that this will reopen in the spring of 22, not for us to go back through the same that we went through last year? Are you confident it's going to be open, Chris?
Zoe, do you want to answer that one, Zoe?
I will. I'm going to say these words now. Very confident. Yeah, they've been on site for the past few weeks, councillor, to be honest with you. I'm anticipating, you know, pretty early on in the new year, we'll have that site complete. And obviously we won't be able to open until the springtime then, but we're not envisaging any, you know, major impacts. I appreciate completely what you're saying. We did have a lot of unforeseens with the Canolfan, and it did delay significantly, and we did have that impact. And we did have the unforeseens in relation to the splash pad as well and the foundations, but the contractor's been on site, and they've got lots of other work programmed in as well, so I'm sure they'll be really keen in supporting us achieving the completion date, which I believe is around sort of January, February time. So yes, I have confirmed, very confident. Hopefully those words won't come back to bite me, but yeah.
I'll hold you to account, Zoe. I'll hold you to account. Yeah, thanks, that's great.
It is recorded, John, just so you know.
I know, maybe I shouldn't have said those words, Chair.
Just to follow up on that one, Chair and John, if I can. Now, I think, as you know, the Canolfan's opened, right? So you can visit the Canolfan, you can have a nice cup of coffee, nice bite to eat, etc., etc. Now, and I think we pushed the Leisure Trust to open as soon as they can, because we saw it as an opportunity to start something new, even though it was the end of the season, right? Now, thinking forward to next year, though, right, it's a big opportunity for the Leisure Trust really to make a new mark on the park, right? Because the facility is absolutely brilliant, right? It's in a great backdrop, right? I think we've always spoke about it being a sleeping giant commercially, right? Because you've only got to go to other parks around Southeast Wales, right, and see how well they do trade, right? Summer, yes. Spring, summer without a doubt. Spring, yes. Autumn, winter, yes. I'm of the view, if the product is right, people will travel to spend some money on nice food. And there's no better place than Cyfarthfa Park, is there, when you think about it? So some members be aware, we'll be pushing the Leisure Trust a little bit more. We'll be pushing them, not a little bit more, for an effective business plan and an opening plan to coincide with the splash pad, because it is golden wonga time for the Leisure Trust in the park next year, right? Brand new facility, brand new splash pad. You'll have lots of people wanting to spend money, right? And it's important the Trust menu is absolutely spot on to the market. And I think we've been waiting for this one for a while. So myself and my team will be meeting with Jane, the CEO, to make sure they got that, and we're signing off on their opening plans as well, right? Because we really, really want a top draw offer. So just wanted to mention that, Chair.
Thanks, Chris. John, is that everything?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that, Chris. That's great to you. Yeah. Thanks, Chair.
No problem. Deputy Leader?
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Thanks, Chair. Just want to come on the back of what Chris said there, really, and what John mentioned as well. I think our residents have had a hard time over the last 2 years through the COVID pandemic, and they deserve the best facilities in the county borough. I think we all agree over the last year, we were criticised for not having the splash pad open. We really got the Canolfan open as fast as we could, and we saw, a good deal of traffic going there throughout the summer and late autumn. And I think it even surprised the Leisure Trust how many people went there to use it. We do get compared with Bryn Bath Park and Ynys Anharad in Pontypridd and Aberdare Park. But I think when everything's open in Cyfarthfa, the splash pad, the new playground and the Canolfan, with the right offer, it's the best park offer in Southeast Wales. And I think the times of opening has got to be ambitious. They got to aspire, I think, for a big programme of events in the park, I think, through Easter, right through to the autumn, and to show the people of Merthyr and the surrounding area that the park is open for business. And I think, Chris, I think that's going to be part of your conversation with the officers of the Trust.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. I went to the Canolfan the first time about a month ago, and I was surprised how nice it was. It looks amazing. Well done to everybody involved with that. I've got a few questions, and we've touched on it quite a lot, I guess. In terms of the castle, we talked about spending £1 million on a roof a few years ago. That's about the 10th of the size of what needs doing, and obviously building materials have gone through the roof as well. So obviously, in my head, it's upward of £10 million that possibly needs to the roof. Maybe, I don't know. Who's gonna, in this period of 18 months, it says on page 10 of transferring of assets, who's gonna apply for the funding? Has the funders been identified? Obviously the rest of the buildings is going to, 30, 40, 50 million, whatever it's going to cost. I don't know, now that the funding, I don't know, landscape has changed with the European money, where is that funding going to come from? And will Cyfarthfa Foundation want to take this asset on in its current condition as well? That's my question, really.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. You kept the hardest questions for yourself.
Well, I give everybody else the chance to ask them, so
yeah, and to be honest with you, if we know the answers, we'd have probably done it ourselves, Lee. Right? No. So going back to why do we set the SPV up, right? So we set the special purpose vehicle up, and the board members have come together because they have national experience of fundraising at a very, very high level, right? The chair, Geraint Alvin Davis, was the founder of the Millennium Centre, and that story goes on and on and on, right? Helen Prothero, who's on the board, has got national experience of fundraising, etc., etc., etc. Right? So, I think on the one side we should have confidence that the board and the company is going to start from a very, very strong position. It's got £1.2 million of revenue to attract the right salaries for a project director that should be front and centered on fundraising, right? So we do see, obviously, play into that tune as the company's position to go looking for the funding with the support of the local authority, isn't it? Right? We got to be supportive as a local authority because they're our assets, right? And equally, the Leisure Trust has got to understand the bigger picture, which they do, that the foundation and the local authority and the Leisure Trust, right, I got a tripart agreement to do this together moving forward through this transitional phase, right? So that's my sort of initial response to the question. It will be the foundation with all of our support driving on the funding to achieve this vision over a short, medium, long term. Now, that's easier said than done because you're right, Chair. European funding's changed. However, we started to see glimpses of the new Shared Prosperity Fund, and as you know, we've been successful in £2 million for 4 or 5 projects that we see as the start of a new era around funding for community-based projects, CRF. This fits nicely into levelling up, which is the big infrastructure programs moving forward as well. So looking forward, I think the funds in principle are in place, whilst HLF has kind of disappeared. The new source of the European funding we start and see glimpses of, right, which is good. And again, I think, one of the key essence of setting up the special purpose vehicle was his ability to apply for charitable trusts as well. So it's another component really that I think the foundation are keen to start to explore. So like anything, I think it's gonna be some challenge. It is. Well, it's gonna be some challenge. We know that. Talking 50, 75 million pound in terms of raising capital for just the furnaces and the castle is a challenge, right? And on top of that, then you have to have a product that you're going to sustain, right? So whatever goes into the castle has to be a sound business model, isn't it? Right? And as over the years you will know, there's various ideas being mooted for uses in the castle, everything from a museum to conferences to weddings, your hotel, a restaurant, a bar. All those will come back out onto the table, and they as part of a long list that I think everybody needs to reappraise again and look at the business model for the castle. So I'm not too sure if our answers all the question, Lee, but I think in terms of finishing off, I think the Cyfarthfa Foundation really are the company, right, that will drive on the fundraising strategy. And we started to see sites of the subgroups as well. So we set up a fundraising committee, a development committee, a finance committee. I can't think of the other one. Councillor Thomas is another one in my mind. There's a fourth one. So they starting to gear up the governance structures, right, to drive on it, which is good, really good. So hopefully next year, based on the appointment of the key staff and key consultants, we'll be, you know, we should be able to bring some of that to scrutiny meetings, you know. And just another idea, you know, it'd be good to have, you know, company representatives at these meetings, so you can actually talk to them guys as well, really. I don't know what members would feel about that, Chair.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Before I invite Geraint in, my concern is that, you know, this takes some time. It says 18 months transfer of assets that was from a period of time ago. I don't know whether that's achievable, but by the time you get the funding for the roof to maintain the castle, will it be past the state of disrepair, and how bad will the castle be at that point? That's my concern for the next few years.
No, we gotta look to fix the castle now, Chair Lee. We gotta look to fix it now, and we're having conversations now over our co-capital aligning to some of the work. We can't wait for it to deteriorate, right? We're going to be spending money on that castle next year, so that's the plan, yeah.
Yeah, we're really fortunate, Chair, that the original consultants that we appointed to support us with the roof repair works have been reappointed through our recent tender process now for the condition survey. So what we're looking to do is to try and just identify perhaps the sort of next phase priority areas of the roof that we weren't able to look at then in previous phase due to funding constraints. We look to recost those, and as Chris said, look for some finance within the immediate to short-term period to fix areas of that roof. You know, we'll be looking at our own internal budgets. We're working very closely with Welsh Government as well to look for opportunities. So as an authority, there's things we are trying to do immediately. And as Chris said then, the foundation coming in behind that to really fully fundraise. The one thing we need to take into consideration, of course, it won't impact with any roof repair works, is that we don't fund anything that's eventually going to be any sort of abortive costs, and you know, that perhaps hasn't enabled us to undertake any sort of major works to the castle, but this roof repair now, you know, that won't be impacted by that. And again, it's become a real, just as much of a priority for us as the relocation of the collection, really. So we're looking at both as a priority, running sort of simultaneous to each other, and obviously the one will have a positive impact on the other as well then.
That's great to hear, thank you. Geraint, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just a couple of points on your question, Lee. I know that Michael Gove came to Merthyr a couple of weeks ago. I met with the leader, and Michael Gove now is the Secretary of State for Levelling Up. So it's very high on the UK government agenda and Welsh government's agenda as well, because they see, you know, the Cyfarthfa project as being a massive regeneration scheme for the area. I think what we've got to do, Ian Ritchie's left us some ideas on what the castle can be in the future, but I think we've really got to agree quite soon and very quickly on what its final design is going to be, because we could waste a lot of money on the castle for unnecessary repairs as well going forward, you know. So I think that's important, so we agree that. And I think information reports coming to council on a regular basis is important of the developments as things move on. And obviously, yes, we could bring some board members and perhaps the new employees as well, officers of the SPV to scrutiny as well, so you can see the plans as they progress. Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Thanks, yeah, that's great. One last question I got in terms of the 1.2 million funding. Has any of that been used at the moment? Has anybody been appointed through that funding?
No, I think they spent it's about £47,000 though.
Yeah, just under 50k. Yeah.
We got the clock on them. That's what I know is 47,323.22 pence. No, they profiled that. And in all fairness, I think they were waiting for. So the strategy was point the board, right? Tick. And then look at forecast leading into 22-23, and the big appointment is the project director, so I'm told, and we just waiting to see sight of JDs and really what forecasts look like moving forward. And it's an interesting position we find ourselves in there. So the local authority are the grant recipient body, right? And we are monitoring and evaluating the impact of the grant and the developments, right? So at this point in time, isn't it? At this point in time, as the company evolves, right? Obviously, they'll be in a better position then to have their own autonomy and then apply for funding themselves. So we've got a kind of many views on the relationship, and we really in that when we're a GRB watching spend, right, and in theory providing an overview and oversight for WG as we do as a grant body, but equally we want them to have the autonomy, don't we? We want them to be flight of feet, flexible. We want to do fast track. That's the whole idea of setting the SPV up, isn't it? Really, so they deshackled from the bureaucracy of perhaps we are sometimes in our developments. So it's an interesting edge that is, guys, if I'm honest. It's very new, and hopefully, we can balance that edge out in a way that they give us something that we've struggled with for years, isn't it? Really, and this is all about fast track developments, isn't it? That's what we want. We want a very good team come to place with good consultants, with a great plan. We've got a great footprint from the start. They've got a good board. They've got a good chair, a lot of experience there. So everything stacks up quite nicely, doesn't it, really? And only time will tell, I think, guys. But I think the mood music is very, very good, and, I think we should take some positivity from that. And hopefully, we can, as I say, we can bring them back next year and they can start to unfold some of these plans for us, really, and come back and tell us this time next year they've secured £50 million for the castle. Okay, perhaps not, but you know what I mean.
Well, that'd be nice. I like your optimism. Yeah, right, okay. Any more questions? Any comments? No? I'd just like to thank you for coming today and being so honest with us. It's been really good. I think some decent questions in there today. And yeah, good luck. It's really exciting. And yeah, it'd be nice to see the team come on board and come to Scrutiny, and maybe the board members as well, and be nice to meet them and see the project take place. So in my lifetime, I hope, anyway. So
yeah, no, thanks, guys. Thanks for the invite. And in terms of your work program, anytime you want us to come back and talk about all of it, components of it, there's a lot in the report. There's a lot happening, and if you want us to dissect a component of it and do a deep dive on some of it, just let us know. And sometimes it's good to mix it up a little bit, whether we do some workshops on it. Happy to do that. So just leave those thoughts with you guys.
Well, thanks. You're welcome to stay or go. I'm sure you want us to go. Yeah. So we'll catch up with you soon.
We've got to go now. We've got to catch up on all our emails, haven't we?
Good luck.
Thanks, guys.
First thing everybody did. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay. Right. Moving on. Agenda item 4, committee work programme. So as you've seen from emails, things are juggled around a little bit. We've asked, I'm just reading my notes here, discussion at the last meeting a report on the financial implications on housing and homelessness services. We're gonna chase them up on that, and we're gonna look to bring it forward. I discussed it with Maria earlier. If the information is available in time for the January meeting, I'll ask them to bring it then. But there's no point in them coming in if they haven't had the information in time. Is that your take on it, Maria, as well?
Yes, Chair. I think because we're waiting for word from Welsh Government around future funding, particularly in relation to the sustaining of the additional funding we're being given for housing and homelessness. If the announcement isn't made prior to the period we needed to upload reports, then obviously it would be unfair to ask the officers to come forward with the report, because it could be very quickly outdated. So I'm happy on behalf of the committee to keep a watching brief and to go back to the officers to check. And when they get the update, I'll come back to you in the first instance, Chair, just so you can take a decision about whether you need it scheduled sooner rather than later.
Thanks, Maria. Anybody got any questions on the forward work programme? No? Okay, next agenda item, scrutiny referrals. I don't believe there's any. Maria?
None of which I'm aware, Chair.
Okay. Next agenda item, reflection and evaluation of meeting. I think it's quite a good meeting. I think the officers were really honest with us. How does everybody else think it went?
Yeah, they gave good answers to the questions, but I've still got concerns over the reciting of the collection particularly into Unit 5, which I don't think is suitable, to be quite honest. But I don't know what else we can do at this stage.
No, I wished Scott, I wanted you to suggest that comment about maybe seeing if National Museum might like to do a Merthyr collection.
The only reason I didn't sort of allude to it at this point, Chair, was simply because obviously the fact that the person in charge of the museum was already mentioned as within conversation and within one of the responses that we were given. So obviously it is something that obviously I could email through me anyway, but I think it was always sort of covered in essence. So they've got that person there. But yeah, I think maybe through you, Chair, if you want to do is suggest that.
I'm meeting with Jane on Thursday about something totally different, but I will suggest it, and I will make sure it comes. It come from you, because it's not my idea, but I do think it's a great idea. So they may have thought of it.
Even if you use, obviously, given the historical significance of obviously, it being of Cartha Park of the castle itself is using the Rhondda Heritage Site. It could do something for this is what happened in Merthyr. This was the history of what what was achieved there. And
it's a great suggestion, in fairness.
Yeah.
Okay, Kev.
Yeah, I think in fairness, it's the relocation of the museum artifacts is going to be a very emotive subject, and I think you're right about Unit 5, Malc. This is why I was trying to drill into him about the security in Unit 5 and the humidity and whatnot, because basically it's a tin warehouse, isn't it, Unit 5, and they would have to put a hell of a lot of measures in place to ensure they protect the artifacts. Plus with the value on them as well. So it is vitally important that the right place is found, and I can understand where they're coming from. To try and house something like this in somebody else's building is probably going to come across similar sort of issues. So yeah, I don't envy their task in that. When it comes to the actual castle itself, like you, Lee, I do have some reservations that the building is going to deteriorate a hell of a lot more before they can actually put in place any of the repairs they're talking about, because as far as I'm aware, there's been water ingress not just from the roof, but from down below as well for a good many years. So I've heard stories that they've had to shut the school on many occasions because they've been flooded out from the ground up. So it's not just about the roof for me. So I think this is why I was trying to ask Chris, was he surprised at how bad the building is at present, because people have been going on about this for a good number of years, and to me, I think they should have tried and secured the building to make it watertight at a far earlier stage. But again, it's a massive project.
Yeah,
and I understand where they're coming from, that they don't want to do certain works because of the plan that's coming in place. But for me, if it's a grade 1 listed building, we need to protect the building as is. The outer membrane. The thing is, they can't reconfigure the shape of the building from the outside, can they? If it's a grade 1 listed building, they can reconfigure the inside, but not the outside. So
they can reconfigure the school part of it. I don't believe that's listed. I think it's only the castle itself, because that was an additional building on the side, so they can reconfigure that bit. But the main roof of the castle, like I said, is, you know, they did 10% of the work a number of years ago, and it's £1 million, and you know, it's 10 to 15 million. I would just to repair the roof at the moment. That's without the other works it needs doing. So it is a concern.
Yeah, it is. That building is a massive concern, and if it deteriorates further and we end up spending hundreds of millions on it, we need to preserve that building before it goes too far.
Yeah, agreed. Scott?
Yeah, just an off the sort of out of the ballpark possible suggestion, and I don't know why it sort of come to mind. Why can't we relocate the council offices and the council to the castle for starters, and use the actual civic centre as the museum?
Yeah, I don't know how practical that one is. Everybody be off with the pneumonia.
Thing is, we'd all be in a smaller. Obviously, granted, we'd all be in a smaller space, but there should, in theory, be enough room for the current used offices within the council, and then just move everything down into the town centre. There we are. It's all central. Job done.
You had a great idea earlier. You've just gone the other way with that one. So
I said it was out of the ballpark.
Scott, I think the civic centre is less secure than Unit 5. Don't go there.
Yeah, I would run with that. Yeah. All right. Anybody else?
No.
Okay. Moving on. Last agenda item. Any other business? I don't have any. So if I don't see any of you, I'd like to wish you a very Merry Christmas and have a good one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Take care all.
And the same to you guys.
Thank you. Yeah. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Chair. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Will.
Bye.